Good evening, everyone. If you would like to sit down, this would probably be a good time to take a seat. Hello. That sounds good. The best view. That's right. Okay, we have a few folks coming in, so we'll give them a couple seconds here. Yes. Yeah, why don't you grab that? All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. And I want to start by welcoming everybody to our presentation tonight. And thank you for coming out. This is good to see folks that are interested in a project that the school district's putting before the community. And so tonight, hopefully, we are able to present you a lot of information about what we plan to do, and actually also answer some questions. And I've got a group of folks here that are going to help me. And my name is Grant Norgard. I'm the superintendent from McCook Public Schools. And I have a whole group of experts and other folks that are involved with this project that are going to help me present. But I'm going to get us started. And so let's start with our first slide. Well, this is just talking about meetings. We're actually on the last one, so I don't have to spend too much time on this slide. Okay, this is our agenda for today, this evening. Process. Number one, first thing we're going to cover, I'm going to cover that. Current challenges, and those are the challenges we're really facing at the junior high and with the performing arts facilities at the high school. Proposed design, the financial impact of this project, frequently asked questions, and also public feedback. So that's kind of going to be the things that we roll through today in this presentation. Now at the end, it's not on here, we're going to give a tour of the facilities that we're looking at addressing. So that we're going to point out some of those challenges in person if you would like to stay and see them. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the process. And so you can kind of see this chart, this flow chart of how we got to where we are today. And this started with we evaluated our current facilities and identified needs. That took place in 2013. So that was a number of years ago when the Board of Education wanted to look at our different facilities. They wanted to look at the high school, they wanted to look at the junior high, and they wanted to make determinations about what they need to do to improve those facilities for our students. At that time, we hired engineers, local engineers and architects, to go through our facilities and give us some feedback on what we are actually capable of doing and what we could do with our own maintenance staff. At that time, we got reports back that the high school facility was in good shape. It was a good structure, it was solid, but it was old and needed updating. We also received at that time a report on the junior high where there was concerns about its structure. It was fine, it's structurally sound currently, and it was then as well, but its longevity was in question by the engineers at that time. So what the board decided to do was to invest money in updating the high school facilities. There's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, one I already just explained, the junior high wasn't necessarily a facility we wanted to get into remodeling. There's a lot of things we couldn't do at the junior high with our maintenance staff because of the type of structure it is. It doesn't have solid walls. So going in there and putting our guys in there and building solid walls where those curtain walls existed was something we couldn't do because of the cost, the structural integrity, and also it just got really expensive when you talk about putting in sprinkler systems, those types of things. But we could go into the high school and start remodeling there, which we've done. So over the last 10 years, the maintenance staff in the McCook Public Schools has gone through our classrooms at the high school and updated our classrooms. If you've been into any of those classrooms lately, you will see the updates we made. Drywall, drop ceilings, new lighting, modernized electronics and technology, and wiring. The other areas that we updated were our bathroom spaces. So if you walk in, if you went to a volleyball game, basketball game, something along those lines, go into the restrooms, you're going to see that we don't have the green floors anymore or the cinder block walls. We have nice tile and we have new stainless steel dividers. Really did a nice job updating those facilities. Some common areas as well. The commons area where we get our snacks and treats, at the concession stand at the high school, and also our library. All those types of things were updated. And we're not done. We're still working on the high school this summer. We intend to start working on the hallway spaces, start going down our hallways and doing the same type of work. Putting up drywall, drop ceilings, new lighting, and continuing to update that facility. Because we have the skill set, we have the folks that can do that on staff, and we can afford it as long as we continue on a pathway where we do the updates incrementally. So those architects and engineers were part of that process of looking at our facilities. And we also, and so I talk about architects and engineers, the next one says architects and engineers. That's because we go into the future, about 2020. And we know that we need to do something with the junior high. We know the elementary bond is about to be paid off in 2020. This is the last year. Actually, at December of this year, there's no more money that's going to be collected on the elementary bond. Sorry, the elementary bond. So that's going to be paid off. So we knew we need to start at that point in time and take a closer look at our facilities. And we're talking about the junior high specifically. Brought those folks in and looked at the facilities. Or we actually talked to several different engineering and architecture groups and decided on working with W Design. During that process, we provided them with some long-term plans and some goals of the project that we were interested in. We wanted to have a project where the building was going to last 80 to 100 years. So whatever we did, whether it was a remodel, because at that point in time we thought it could be a remodel, or a new build, that building needs to last 80 to 100 years. We wanted to have high-quality classroom space. We wanted to get rid of the curtain walls. It's just not a great learning environment. In fact, it's not even a fair learning environment. So we wanted to improve the learning space. We wanted to improve safety. We have issues with our students traveling between the buildings on a daily basis. Every period, we have kids from the junior high go to the high school, and kids from the high school go to the junior high because we have high school classes in the junior high, and we have some junior high classes in the high school. Kids travel between. And when you put kids outside, you worry about their safety. They're more exposed in those when they travel between the buildings. The other thing that we wanted to do was make sure that we provided new industrial arts facilities for our kids. So we wanted to enhance that area. And we're talking about woods, electronics, agricultural arts. So our eggs classes, plant sciences, animal sciences. And also with the hope of bringing in some welding programming for our students. We feel a school of our size should have welding for our students, and we don't really have the space or the facilities to do that currently. So we wanted to expand industrial arts. And we also wanted, the other goal of that was, that we had identified at that time, was improving our performing arts facilities. And so if you haven't been in our auditorium lately, the tour tonight, you'll be able to you'll have a chance to take a look at it and see what our auditorium currently looks like. And it hasn't been, well, it really kind of hasn't been touched since it was built in the 50s. So, and just so you know, for reference point, the high school was built in the 50s and the junior high was built in the 60s. And we're not talking about the high school, even though it's an older building. The reason for that is the structural issues I referenced earlier when I started this presentation. Once the architects kind of got a vision for what we wanted to do and had our main objectives identified, they then went around and visited with every staff member in the junior high. So they sat down with every teacher, they sat down with our custodians, they sat down with our kitchen staff, they sat down with our secretaries and administrators, everybody. And they took notes. They just got into a conversation with our staff, wanted to know what they thought this new school should have in it, what it should look like, what were their needs. After they visited with us, after they visited with the staff, then they put together that first conceptual design. And with that first conceptual design, we were able then to bring in some members of the community. And that design, of course, it was the very beginning design. And at that time, after they visited with the staff, after they visited with us and learned about our goals, they came back with a conceptual design that was not a remodel. They said, and there's a reason for that, and I'm going to let the engineers talk about why that is, but it was mostly a new construction. We are going to use portions of the current junior high, the gymnasium and the office spaces and the locker rooms will be utilized, but basically everything else will be replaced with a new facility. or a parking lot. Right now, if the bond were to pass, where we're standing or sitting, where I'm standing, where you're sitting, right now will become a parking lot. Once we brought those community members in, we shared that conceptual design with those community members, and those community members provided feedback to the architects and engineers and to the school. And there was a number of those, their recommendations were added into this plan. One of the big one really, was when they looked at the project, we really hadn't done anything with the gymnasium except, we talked about new bleachers, new wood floor, new lighting, that type of stuff. But when they looked at it, they identified a concern that they had with early and late practices, and then the administration and the staff actually commented in the same way, that they don't have enough space for classrooms during the day. They'd like to do split classrooms. There's not enough space in there. Why? The stage is a problem. The stage was a design that they put in the 60s. They probably had a really good purpose for it. But whatever that purpose was, it's no longer something that we use, at least not as it was originally intended. And so their idea was to take out that stage, currently that basketball court runs north and south, flip the basketball court for competition, have it run east and west, and then 2 practice courts. Once that stage is out, you can do this. 2 practice courts that run north and south. What can you do then? Well, you can run 2 classes of PE, or physical education, simultaneously. You can run 2 basketball practices simultaneously, 2 volleyball practices simultaneously. Why is that important? Well, we have an issue with early and late practices in McCook. We don't have a lot of gyms. Even for the size of we're a Class B school, we have a lot of teams that compete. 7th, 8th grade, junior high, high school, freshman, sophomore teams. We have a lot of kids that play basketball. We use a lot of gym space. And even with the addition of that single gym space, dividing that gym space into 2 usable practice facilities, we're still going to have to do some early and late. So we're kind of hopeful that YMCA project keeps going too, because we kind of have a partnership with them and hope to utilize that space, some of their gym space, to eliminate some of those early and late practices as well. So we kind of have a plan there to really help out our families and get away from late night practices for our kids. So that's just one of them. There were other ideas that came from that group, reducing the amount of glass for safety reasons, some of those types of things. After they talked to them, they gave the Board of Education another conceptual design. They made the changes to the basketball court. They had other changes in there. And then they presented us design. And then we had our construction manager at risk, which is Samson, go out and do some estimates on that. And when those estimates came back initially, we're sitting right at $56 million, $57 million based on those estimates. And that didn't include any of the architecture or engineering fees. So we're really talking about a $60 million project at that point in time. Well, that's a lot of money. And if the superintendent's not going to vote for it, it's probably not going to go over well with the community. So the Board of Education worked for several months with Samson and the estimators, and they went back and forth, lots of design changes, lots of reduction in square footage, changing in materials. And Jeff can talk a little bit about this too. He likes to talk about the elevators, so make sure you talk about how the elevator shaft got cheaper. But there's a lot of things we had to do to try to find a way to reduce the overall cost of this project, to bring the price down. Now, $43 million is a lot of money. But what we're getting for this is all of those core pieces, or core objectives that we identified at the beginning. All 5 of them. So we're improving classrooms, we're improving safety, we're going to get a building that's going to last a long time. We're going to get a new industrial arts complex, our area that we're going to be proud of, and new performing arts kids, where our kids that can perform, where our band can do a band concert, where our choir can do a choir concert, where our one act can host a conference one act competition, which we currently cannot do, and we're the largest school in our conference. The designs came back, like I said, 43.5 to reduce the costs. Once we were able to get to that number after months of negotiations, the board passed a motion to approve that amount, to put that on the ballot on November 5th, to give the community an opportunity to make a decision of whether or not they did or did not want to support that project. And so November 5th is so I think that's next week, right? It's coming up. All right, current challenges. So this is a fun part because I get to use a laser pointer, but I'll use the one on the computer. All right, so junior high building challenges. And if you go on the tour, I'm going to go over this. I'm going to take the time. We made a slide, so we've got to talk about it. But the best way to see what our challenges are is to go on our tour of the facility. That's the best way to see what our challenges are. But I'll cover these things for everybody. Building deteriorating due to settlements and age. All right? And our architects and engineers are going to talk about that as well. Outdated mechanical systems require frequent maintenance. That's true. Our roof leaks in areas causing water damage. We need to replace our roofs right now. We haven't, because it's going to be over $400,000 to replace our roofs. If we're going to pass this bond, that's not money well spent. So we're waiting to see if this bond passes in the community. Otherwise, we're going to have to address that. Exterior walls showing signs of deterioration, including cracks in various places, inadequate classroom sizes, performing arts spaces, and CTE stands for Career and Technical Education. That's industrial arts and agricultural arts, and also business courses. Facilities do not meet ADA accessibility standards, and so we have some issues with ADA accessibility. If you go on the tour, if you look over there on that west wall, you'll see how our students that are wheelchair bound go up and down the stairs. That creates, it works, but it's not the best solution. Need for improved safety features such as reduced entry points. If you walk around this building, you'll see that we have a lot of places to enter this facility. And we have to keep track of all those entry points. That's a difficult challenge. And it's a safety concern. Need for, okay, and I already said that. Poor academic environment. Again, go on the tour, take a look at our classrooms, see if those curtain walls make for a good barrier between math, social studies, and English language arts. Title IX, this created some, the reason this slide's on here is because it created some confusion when we first started talking about Title IX. When we say that we're not Title IX compliant, we're talking specifically about our locker room space. So Title IX is a federal statute where we're supposed to have equal square footage and locker space for both girls and for boys. We do not have that. Our boys' locker room is about three quarters larger, something like that, than our girls' space. We're out of compliance with that. And it is something that needs to be addressed in the design. If you look over there, if you want to take some time, you can take a look at it when we're done here. You can see that the new locker space is designed to be equitable. And here's some challenges. Pictures. Again, the pictures don't do justice to what's going on here. This is a girls' bathroom. Where's Mr. Lyons? All right. Help me with all these. If I get anything wrong, you just correct me, Mr. Lyons. Girls' bathroom here, you can see a crack going up the wall. It might not look like much in here. Go see it in person. This is in the area. So these two slides show the area of the building, the center of the building, just east of the office space, where the building is actually sinking into the ground and creating some structural problems for us. Engineers and architects are going to talk about that in a little bit. There's some more evidence of that. You can see that door space is not straight, it's angled. We've got leveling issues here where the floor is sinking below the wall. It's creating some problems outside, both inside and outside in that location. This is the back area where we bring in food. So for our food service, it's right back here on the north side. That's a steep slope down into a concrete area. It's created a lot of problems for us. You can see we have cones up there for safety purposes. Parts of the building are actually separating and opening up to the outside elements because of that sinking of the building. In here, we'll look at some more challenges. This is a classroom space. Mr. Lyons, do you know what classroom this is? If you don't, that's fine.
8th grade social studies.
So this is an 8th grade social studies class. And what do you see there? You see lots of desks. It's not a very big space. You see curtain walls. And what the teacher's trying to do is make the best of that space. And that's what you're going to find, is all of our teachers are really doing the best they can to utilize that space in a practical, wise way. So you see a lot of shelving that's not there. Most classrooms, you go into high school, go into the elementaries, you're going to see lots of shelves, lots of cupboards. Here our teachers have to make their own because there's really just not wall space to do that. Notice there's also not wall space there for a whiteboard or a video board or anything along those lines. Right here to the right we have now that's either electronics or that's electronics and drafting. That space was originally intended for a choir or a band. What's that, band? Well, we have another room like that we'll show later, which was for choir. This classroom, you can see lots of desks in that space. Room 10. That's it. Mr. Lyons knows the number. Room 10. So that's room 10. A lot of desks, not much space. Over here, just a second. We're getting into our industrial art spaces. So you can take a look at this. We have our staff has built storage spaces up above to provide for more floor space for the projects. You can see when you go down there, you're going to see it's a very cramped space. In those spaces also, though, even though we're cramped and we have storage issues, we do have really nice equipment for the kids to work on. So you can see some of that really expensive equipment that they have to work with. But you also see how we'll vent out sawdust and those types of things. It's not the best way to do things. And here's a classroom. This is 6th grade science. And you pass through this classroom to get to Mr. Dagnan's room, which is another classroom. So we have a setup here where you actually pass through one classroom to get to another classroom. Also used to be Mr. Bedrooms used to be in that classroom. And then here is our choir. It used to be a choir room, and now that is
Materials.
yeah, they do a lot of the younger kids do a lot of cutting of wood and stuff like that in there, and then other material projects. Again, in this upper left-hand corner, you've got more shop space, and this piece of equipment right here is a little laser router. Pretty nice piece of equipment. We have to vent that out that window right there. In here, it's really nice and clean. They're doing a nice job keeping this sharp. This was taken right before school started. So you can see the facilities are well cared for. When you get into this, it looks really nice. I said this last time, it looks really, really nice right now when nobody's in it. Once you start putting bodies in there, you'll realize just how crowded that space is. Here again, the gym looks really, again, the facilities are well cared for. That's the gym space I'm talking about. In the distance, this is the gym we want to keep, but alter that floor, flip that floor and go east and west with it. That's that stage we'd like to take out and then put the competition floor going east and west. And then you only have bleachers on one side, which was a cost-saving measure. You still get 800 seats in there, but it'll save us some money by doing that. And also give us 2 courts to practice on, to teach PE classes in. It'll be a nice change. Again, some more in this bottom left-hand corner, more industrial art space. Here's a view of the gymnasium in the center there, gymnasium from the stage looking out onto the gym. So that this stage right here is what we would like to take out if the bond passes. And this is the girls' locker room. All right, this takes us down into the boiler. A boiler room. We got 3 large boilers running across there. We also have a large water holding tank. You can't see it in that picture. It's elevated. So we've had to do a lot of maintenance that was never intended for this equipment to be done because we can't get it out of there. We can, but you'd have to knock out the wall and dig out the dirt along the north side of the building and create a new ramp like the one we have going into the food service area. That's the only way to get in there. There was no exterior doorway put on there. There's one door right over here that goes into that space, and it's probably 36 inches wide, I'm guessing. So these boilers are the same age as the boilers we had in the high school when we replaced the boilers at the high school. New boilers over there. The new boilers are smaller, but still aren't going to go through that doorway. And that water holding tank I talked about, we had to cut a hole in the side of it and put our smallest maintenance guy in there, and he got to spray the inside with epoxy. And he has to do that every several years just so we can continue to use that water tank. And the water tank is huge. It'd be a really, really big bathtub. I mean, huge. On the top right, we have a water fountain that no longer works. We have several spots on this end of the building where we no longer get fresh water because the water lines have kinked. And we think maybe we have an idea where that's at, but currently we don't have water in those spaces. We're in this room currently, right now. This is our cafeteria. And in this design that we are proposing before the community, we'll have a new cafeteria that will be shared, but this cafeteria is shared junior high and high school. The new one will as well, but it'll be situated between the 2 facilities. So you actually would pass through the cafeteria area to get from industrial arts to English if you're a high school student, or from English if you're a junior high student to performing arts in the high school. So, and that obviously it's a common space that all the kids would benefit from. And so it'll be a little bit bigger in square footage, not much, but it'll have a higher ceiling on most of that area. Here's our hallway space. It's hard to get an understanding of why we took a picture of that. You can see it's clean, it's well cared for. But when those kids are in that hallway and locker doors are open and kids are pulling stuff out of their lockers, this becomes a very congested part of our junior high school. And you can talk to some of our teachers about that, and they'll tell you how congested that can be during the day. So, and then a couple more pictures of our boiler room. And we're looking at water heaters and air handling units and pipes. All this equipment requires a lot of attention. All right, so moving on to the high school. So performing arts is also part of this project. We have a very old high school. In fact, the original seats are still in our high school auditorium. And so some of the seats in the back are just fine. The closer you get to the front where people want to sit, the more worn out they are. But they are the original seating. It has insufficient lighting and general audience area. So if you go in there, we've tried different things to improve the lighting. It's far more technical than I ever realized. And so we did go through some processes to improve the lighting, but we had to change and go back to what we were doing before that because of overheating and just the way the equipment works. It's not normal lighting like you have in your house, and it's expensive. I've talked about the seating. We have specific auditorium HVAC issues that we've had to work through in the last couple of years. General audience area cannot completely black out windows. There shouldn't probably be windows in there. Stage size the stage size in the high school is far too small, especially for the types of performances kids do today and the competitions that they put on. We can't really put our whole band up there. The one acts, it doesn't qualify for the size that we need for one acts. It's maybe half the size of what we're supposed to have to do competitive one act performances. And I might be off a little bit on that, but it's too small. We lack off-stage storage spaces for our kids. Stage accessibility for set pieces, it's not ground level. It has to be lifted up, which causes problems for us. And that's another issue with the Southwest Conference. You have to be able to easily transfer your props and gear into the theater area, into the prop staging area. And there has to be 2 exits. We don't even come close to any of those requirements. And then costume and prop storage is insufficient. The new design has considerably more prop storage for us. Choir rooms lack small group practice spaces. We got decent sized spaces here. So our band and our choir rooms are decent sizes. We lack individual practice spaces for our kids. So there's no place for the trumpets to practice together for competitions. There's no place for any quartets, small groups to practice together to prepare for competitions. We lack those spaces. It's also isolated, and storage space from band instruments is limited. It's right there in the band room. So if we get in there today, you'll see where we store our band equipment. Here's some pictures of our auditorium that I've spent some time talking about. You can see that the original seating there. Good color scheme, this is our band right here in the top right. Here's our choir room, and that's the stage. This is a very small stage, and we've actually have an extension. We've done some work to extend that out, but it's still not sufficient. And then our seating. And I think now I turn it over to Mr. Wolford, because I'm coming up. One thing I want to say something about performing arts. And I've said this a few times, and I really believe it. We have a place in our school where kids have the opportunity to compete against other schools in one act. And in Southwest Conference, one of the reasons we joined was because we had the opportunity to compete in performing arts. The conference we were in before that did not. So we were really excited about joining the Southwest Conference. If Weiland Field looked like our auditorium, we would immediately address it. We would. And our theater kids deserve a good place to perform. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Wolford. You have it set up.
I think this is working. My name is Greg Wolford. I'm with W Design Associates. When we started this project in late '21, Mr. Norgard and the staff gave us some pretty specific guidelines. He's gone through them, but The first one was improve the core educational spaces. Too small, the noise, everything that he's gone through. Improve the industrial arch of the CTE spaces. Connect the buildings, the security issue of kids running back and forth all day long and all the different entrances that come in and out that the school has to follow. And then the code deficiencies that he talked about. He talked about Title IX, there's ADA deficiencies, there's fire deficiencies. But then he threw a big one on us, and he mentioned it, that whatever we did had to last 80 to 100 years. He didn't tell you why he said that. He told us his logic was McCook patrons can only pay for one bond issue at a time, which makes sense. The high school, as he mentioned, it's going to be, in 30 years, it's going to be 100 years old. They fixed it up where it's going to last another 30 years, but in 30 years, you're going to be looking at the high school. Central Elementary in 60 years will be 100 years old. It's going to need some work. And by the time that gets done, you're going to be right back over to the elementary school, which was done 20 years ago and remodeled. I mean, we just have to maintain our schools. So the first thing we did was a structural review of this building, and a review of this building, what we could do with it. And we really pretty quickly came to two specific conclusions that impact where we went with the proposed design. Yes, we can remodel this building. We could do a remodel of this building. We would not meet the design criteria of the larger classrooms doing it or the number of classrooms they wanted, but it could be made to work. But what we couldn't do, if we remodel this building in 25, 30 years, we're going to be right back working on this building again with the condition it's in and the style of construction that was used on this building in the 1960s. That's the bottom line. The second thing is that became pretty obvious. What do you do if there's 320 some odd kids in this building plus the teachers, plus this room that's the cafeteria for both buildings? What do you do with those for the year it takes to remodel this building? Where do you put them? You know, that's a major issue of concern too. And that's how we came up with the design that we're going to present to you tonight. It solves both of those big concerns. We'll start with the site plan. And I want to, let's see. On the site plan that you're looking at there, north is to the top, Sunset Road, and West 7th is on the right side, to put you in perspective. You can see the existing junior high right here. Okay, so what we're proposing is the gymnasium stays where it is, we remodel that, and we expand and remodel the locker rooms. A new 2-story junior high classroom building is built right here. And then we have the auditorium, the commons area in the middle, that's new construction, and then this yellow is the remodel of the existing high school, which is remodeling the existing band and choir rooms into a library and remodeling the existing auditorium into new band and choir rooms with practice spaces. This plan also does something that it was kind of a goal but not specifically stated. I know if anybody's around here at 8 o'clock or 3:30 in the afternoon, it's an absolute zoo on West 7th and Sunset here, because we've got really no drop-off points, and kids are dropping off and running around everywhere and pulling in and out. We're putting in a parking lot with bus drop-off and parent drop-off pickup. It would be a one-way circulation pattern coming off Sunset Street, dropping off kids here, bus parking here, and then a parking lot to hopefully get some of the parking off the city streets that is an issue right now. So then what you're looking at right now on the two pictures, basically that top picture, you're staying on Sunset, looking south. That would be the entrance, the new main entrance into the building. It goes right into the commons area cafeteria. The junior high, two-story junior high is on the right. And then it's a blow-up of that entrance on the bottom picture. As I go through these plans, there's something that's probably as confusing as anything, is we're marrying two buildings together. And something you need to remember is the main floor of the junior high, which is the same level as the gymnasium, which we have to meet, is 7.5 feet above the floor of the high school. Okay, so you're going to see multiple level changes in these plans through here as we go through it, but that's what we're doing, is we're tying those two together. So what you're looking at right here is the high school improvements. The old auditorium is right there. This is the remodeling of the existing choir band areas into a media center and a drama room. We have the new performing arts building, or performing arts room, the auditorium. Put that into perspective, the stage is double what you have now, if you set it right on top of that. This one has 818 standard seats and 11 handicap seats, so it has a total seat capacity of 829, as shown. We end up with a junior high media center that is sized so that could be combined with the high school for one media center in the future. A new boardroom, we're taking out the boardroom here, and then new restrooms that service the commons area and the auditorium. Okay, this is the rest of the main floor, which is, again, all this is at the high school level, so it's 7.5 feet lower than the junior high. And so the commons area, the main entrance, is right here. New staff, offices, the kitchen coming in there, and then the industrial arts classroom, welding, and industrial arts shop is all right to the back. And we'll show pictures of that. What you're seeing here is the stairs that go up to the two-story junior high classroom, and then an elevator that does that as well. So if you're looking at renderings here of the commons area, this would be sitting at a table in the cafeteria looking north at the main entrance. And then the bottom photo on the right is if you were just walking in and looking south into the cafeteria commons area. On the left is the entrance into the auditorium. This is the new industrial arts CTE area. You can see a drafting classroom on the top, typical classroom, and then the industrial arts area is a rendering on the bottom. Go ahead. This is looking at the industrial arts area. You're looking in the shop, looking to the north, and you'll see we have a mezzanine up above. That's for material storage. It also works as a additional shop space for the ag classroom that's on the second floor of the junior high. These are looking at two different renderings of the new auditorium. One closer to the stage and one further back. Okay. And this is where we're looking at, this is the first floor of the new junior high, which is at the same level as the floor above us right now. So it's the same level as the gym and the office and the existing entrance on the north off of Sunset. One couple of things I want to point out is you have a set of secure doors here to lock off the junior high from the high school commons if needed. There's a set of doors like that on both levels. There is also a security door right here going into the classroom space, so that if you have a function in the athletic functions or whatever in the gymnasium, that's the only access you would have there. We do have on the classrooms, basically it's stacked. You're going to see the second floor, it's pretty close to the same. We have all the classrooms oriented by grade, except the science. All the science is on the second floor, so 8th grade has to move up to the second floor. Go back one, I still want to. Then on the gymnasium and the locker rooms, we are reusing the existing locker room building, but we are expanding it to the south into the space between the existing shop and locker rooms. So we end up with, as Mr. Norgard mentioned, Title IX compliant locker rooms that are both equal size, boys and girls. We also have the locker rooms divided so that each one, by closing a door, you can have 2 smaller locker rooms in each half. So if you had a competition for basketball or volleyball, you could have actually 4 teams utilizing this same gymnasium. Obviously, you couldn't do that with football or a larger team sport. And then, as he mentioned, this is the gym laid out in competition format with the seating on the south, and then the new competition size floor running east and west. So, and this is a view with the seats out and the competition floor running east and west. You can see the rendering of the goals lifted up for when they divide it in half. And then this is the upper floor of the junior high classroom. As you see, it's literally stacked on top, and you can see the orientation by grade. We have the 6th grade, 8th grade science is up there, 7th grade. We have added study halls to this right now. If you come here in the afternoon, you'll have 2 different study halls in this room at least. And you walk through, and every time you walk through, the kids are looking at you instead of studying. It's not very conducive to studying. We have a new ag classroom on the 3rd floor. And I just noticed the security door into the junior high is at that point where the ag classroom is divided off. And then this is the shop mezzanine that I was showing you earlier in the photograph. It's for storage and space for ag labs and stuff. This floor also has several flex rooms. We actually have, as you come up the stairs here, this is a 2nd floor commons area that looks over the main entrance and commons area. And we have flex rooms in there for individual teachings and workrooms for the teachers. These are renderings of a typical classroom on the upper left and the upper right. This is the locker area, the central locker area, which is going to be similar on both floors. And then there's a rendering of the small group individual instruction room. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Stuart Johnson of Sampson Construction.
Thank you, Greg. Stuart Johnson with Sampson. We've been involved in this project, like Grant mentioned, fairly early on. To try to explain a little bit, our role in this process. It's a little different than the traditional design, bid, build. That would be where W Design would take the documents, develop them completely. It would go out to the market of contractors, subcontractors, suppliers. We develop a bid. That bid gets submitted. Generally, whoever's the lowest bid is successful. That's maybe the traditional method. This is much different. We were brought on very early. Shortly after W Design was selected, the school district and board went through a selection process based on qualifications, personnel, availability, understanding of the market. And the advantage of that is we're involved early. Grant mentioned, the initial budget, or the design and budget, came in at $56 million. Well, in this instance, we were able to work with W Design and the school district to create economy in the spaces that they still wanted to utilize and needed to be efficient and provide the education space and the CTE space and additional performing arts. We maintained all of those spaces. We just economized what was going on within them through selection of materials, the sizes of those space. Some of them we did have to reduce a little bit. We looked at interior and exterior finishes on the building. Those are the types of things that our firm was able to bring and provide value to the district early on so that we could still adjust what that design was, ultimately to fit a budget that we felt was appropriate for the community, responsible. Grant mentioned we want something that we can all get behind and trust and have confidence that's going to serve the purpose for the next 80 to 100 years. So that is a little bit different than the traditional role. What was the process taken to arrive at that 43.5? We explained it a little bit. It takes several processes. Design team draws, our team takes it, we break it down into an estimate and a schedule, we provide feedback on our estimates, and we go through that process 3 or 4 times so far. And there's probably still another process or 2 before we get to a final design. But the advantage is that it eliminates surprises. That we get so far down the road that we're at that bid market and we're committed to a project that could have been $56 million. Right? But we were able to bring it back, provide that same level of space that can be utilized for education, performing arts, CTE. We're still providing all of those things within the same space, just for 43.5. Guarantees related to that budget amount. So as the design is completed, final details, final material selections, we are, as a contractor, by contract, required to submit a guaranteed maximum price or a GMP. So at that time, we are set by contract to what that budget is, and we are confident that that's going to be $43.5 million. Now, we do sometimes use, depending on different market situations and economic situations, what we call a contingency. So what that contingency does is it's for design, construction, ownership use, right? None of us are perfect, and there's going to be things that ultimately we decide to modify or change throughout construction. And so that contingency allows the entire group collectively some flexibility, and it's defined by contract early. It's already been defined, but within our contract and with our GMP, that we have that ability to make some small adjustments. We'll talk a little bit about students on the next slide as we go through a schedule, but we've really worked hard to minimize what that is, and part of that's working with the design team to create spaces that we can build prior to having to relocate students out of the space they're in. There is kind of one exception to that, and it's going to be kind of the current CTE space. Here it's going to say the south side of the current middle school building. That portion of it we're going to have to take offline and relocate those students down to, I'm going to call it the Armory or the National Guard building potentially, to allow for...
The old one.
Yes, the old one. The efficient construction of the new building, basically where that building is now, is going to be a part of the administrative cafeteria space. So we can go through the schedule. We may actually have to let this play. I don't know that I can talk fast enough to explain all the space, but early on in the project, that's that CTE space I mentioned having to come offline early so that we can build the new building. Our primary focus will be here to getting the new performing arts space up so that those students don't have to relocate for as long. Our goal is to get that online prior to removing them out of their current space. During that, the new middle school will be built. And turned over before the August of 2026 school year would begin. So we would work through building the new school and take all the way through the 2025 school year. Before 26 starts, we would have the new middle school ready for the school year. And then once that's complete, we would come in, remove the existing building, renovate the existing choir and performing arts space, and that work would probably go into the fall of the 2026 school year. Come back, like Graham mentioned, some new parking space here, and Greg identified the drop-off here and the bus parking along the new performing arts space. Any questions on that portion?
I have questions.
Okay.
We're gonna yell.
All right, I'm Jeff Gross, Business Manager, McCook Public Schools, and this is Tobin Buchanan with Northland Financial. We partnered with them early in this process to help us assist with any financial. This is what Tobin does for a living, and so this is completely new to Mr. Norgard and myself, so we needed that guidance to help work us through a bond issue. I'm going to have Tobin kind of touch on a few of the things in the beginning process here.
So these first few slides will just give you kind of a snapshot in time. We want to provide some financial parameters to start to allow you to at least get an idea of the financial impact for you as an individual. So we've been talking about the construction amount or bond amount. So if you've already voted, you've probably seen this language. There should be a sample ballot that's already been in the paper or coming out. But the ballot language will say that you're being asked to vote for or against this project not to exceed $43,500,000 in bonds. And so it cannot go over that, the issuance. It could be under it if things would happen that way. But everything we're showing you from a financial standpoint, we're going to use that full amount. There's also a project description on that ballot. So I know that's been a kind of a conversation with folks. Some of the bond issues I've been a part of, it's really generic. It may say something like you're voting for or against for this amount for additions and renovations to the educational facilities. And that's as detailed as it gets. Your ballot really gets into some pretty specific information about what you're voting on, what's going to be happening at the middle school, additions, renovations, and the high school. I will say that bond attorneys do write a little bit of flexibility into that language, just so if a district ends up having something pass, and there's some part of a project that makes sense to include, that it hasn't been written in so much detail that there's zero flexibility to add on this little piece or do this small little part that is a part of the spirit of the initial project and programs. Right now, we're modeling a 30-year bond issue. That's not set in stone, but that's where these numbers are based on right now due to the project size and kind of having it stretch out a little more over more than one generation. That's often what bond issues are meant to do, is spread that out a bit. So 30-year bond. Bond yield right now, preliminary snapshot in time, we're basing all our numbers on about 4.3%. I did work with a district that did a 30-year bond about a month and a half ago. It was a little under that when they locked in their rate. We've seen bonds tick up a little bit here recently. All the talk is, and we know none of us know exactly what's going to happen in the future. Even with everything going on, we're still hearing the Fed say that probably throughout next year we're going to see overall rates potentially slowly come down. We don't build those kind of projections into these numbers. We basically say, what is it today on this amount over 30 years, and those are the numbers we're giving you. If by the time these bonds get issued, the rates are lower, then everything we're sharing right now will be less than the numbers you're seeing tonight. The only other thing I'll mention, or one other thing I'll mention, is with a bond amount this size, more than likely they do not all get issued at one time. We'll get if there is a successful bond and that amount can be issued, the next step is usually to get a construction draw schedule from the design team and construction company. and really look at how many dollars are needed initially to pay construction costs to a certain point in time, and especially if you think rates may go down a year or so from now, you may be issuing subsequent bonds at a lower rate as those funds are needed as well. So that's part of our role, is to help the board and district strategize the best strategy for that. Our other role is to talk about legislation, how it impacts bond issues. So you're seeing this number right here, this valuation number with LB2 in parentheses. Your actual district valuation is about $1,046,000,000. That's the valuation used for all your other school taxes. As of January 2022, a new law went into effect called LB2 at the time that takes ag land down to 50% of its market value for the purposes of a bond election. And so there's a different valuation number that the bond levy will have to be multiplied against if this should pass going forward. So it'll be different from your other one.
I'll touch on that real quick. So if your house is valued at $100,000, you're paying general fund tax levies on the $100,000. If your ag land is valued at $100,000, for general fund purposes, you're paying 72% of that, and for bonds, you're paying 50%. So those are designed legislative moves to give ag owners, landowners tax breaks.
We often get told, you're just telling us the principle. You're hiding the fact that there's interest to be paid as part of this. You know, the interest is not on the ballot, just like interest isn't on you see a sticker on a car window or a home, you're showing the principal amount. We are definitely being transparent and including the interest in all of our calculations. So none of us like to see that number of about $32 million in interest over 30 years. Again, will that be the actual interest? I don't know, but if we look at it today, that's what we're using. Your prior bond was refinanced 3 times over 20 years. The board probably saved, I don't know exactly, I would guess $1 million or just under, and they actually knocked years off of it as well. So could those things happen on this bond? I think they will. I can't stand here tonight and guarantee you or build that into any of the numbers we're sharing with you. And so we're basing all these things on annual bond payment of about $2.5 million. When we incorporate all the stuff I've been talking about, that's where that 26-cent bond levy is coming from that you've seen on the website, on materials and things like that. My last 2 slides, we're just going to pull that forward just for a snapshot in time. If you're just looking at property, so this is property in town, residential, commercial, and property on the farm. This is how you would calculate that. 26 cents means $260 a year on $100,000 in property. And I think you can see this information on all the different information that's out there. And then for ag land, this is converting ag land from that about 72% assessed value to 50%. Using Red Willow, average assessed value per acre, I think Frontier is a little bit higher than Red Willow just for irrigated. So if you have land in Frontier, maybe this is a little low of what it would be. But again, we're just trying to help you see some benchmark or estimated numbers for ag land if this bond should pass. There is a calculator on the website. It's an Excel document. If you're able to access it and use Excel, you can actually type in your personal valuation, whether you own a home or commercial property or have ag land. You should be able to put that information in there and it'll kick that out to you.
Thanks, Tobin. I'm going to touch on a few things with where we're at financially as a school district, and to put in perspective of the efficiency of McCook Public Schools and what we try to work on. This first chart up here is cost per pupil based on average daily attendance. So the number of kids in your building, the number of attendance that they take, and we wanted to compare ourselves to several different entities. So when you look up here first off, you're going to see some school districts all around us, the small schools that are part of the ESU 15 consortium that we belong to. So that's your Hayes Centers, Dundee County Southwest. And then you're going to see schools that are in the Southwest Conference that we compete against. Ogallala, Holdridge, Minden, Aurora, Valentine, Adams Central. And then we took, and we needed to compare ourselves to our peers. What schools look the most like us? Demographics, town size, population, student population, and that's Aurora, Nebraska City, Alliance, Seward, Plattsmouth. Those schools look the most like us. The state average for spending per pupil is $17,526. You can see in this whole overall chart with all these school districts, we're at $15,994. So we're just a little bit above what York spends, but we're definitely well below what everybody else spends in these comparison rankings. I can tell you, year in and year out, we always are in the top 10 or 11% of schools in the entire state. When you look at scale of economy, one thing that I always brag about now that I'm the business manager is Omaha Public Schools should be the lowest priced cost per pupil. They have the most kids. I mean, it isn't even close what they have, but we still spend less than even OPS does. And then just a bar graph to show exactly where McCook is in comparison to all our other peer conference or local schools. So we are an efficient school, and I'll touch on our mill levies and things in a few minutes with that. This next chart now, we take what we spend per kid, but then we talk about what we pay locally, okay? So these are the dollars that we collect in taxes for general fund, special building, and bonds. And we took these same schools and we took what we spend locally. Well, you can see that currently McCook, the local taxpayers, pay $6,900 of that $15,600. That's what we pay locally. The rest of that is funded from state and federal funds. Without those state and federal funds, we would not be able to exist. We are what's called a equalized school district in the state. Even with the bond, if it passes, and we put that on there, we move to $8,611 per student, which is well below the rest of the schools in this demographics that we pulled up to look at. We are efficient. We are a low taxation school district, and we've worked hard to stay that way. And so we're not asking for something that all our other peers and partners, what they're having to do in their buildings as well. So, and then here's a scatter plot that shows both of those groupings on there, and you can see the correlation that McCook just is in terms of cost per pupil and local contributions. We are at the bottom of the realm in there. And we're one of the only, especially in the ESU and our conference schools, we are one of the only equalized school districts. So to be an equalized school district, it means that the taxpayers cannot pay enough money to make our school function. The state has to kick in to help us be able to. And so we are funded about 48% from the state, okay, and about 50 and then a few percent from the federal government. We get federal money for our IDEA special needs population, and we get money for a title, which is poverty for reading and math instruction. So we get some dollars for those. So that's how funding works. I want to touch a few seconds on our mill levies and our history. In 2020, McCook Public Schools mill levy was $1.12, okay? That included $1.05 for general fund. That's the maximum a school district can tax its patrons, is $1.05. We also had at that point a 7-cent mill levy on the McCook Elementary bond issue, which put us to $1.12. And as time that you guys have witnessed, your valuations have rose. We've tried to keep our spending low, below 3% every year. We have dropped our mill levy. Valuations went up, We asked for underneath that amount. We now have a mill levy of 89 cents. So we were at $1.12, we're now at 89 cents. Now part of that is that 7-cent bond issue from the elementary slowly whittled its way down to 5.5 cents last year, and it's paid off. So we're getting a 5.5-cent mill levy tax break because that is paid off. The last payment will be made in December of '25. The last collection of taxes is in 2024. If you've paid your 2024 taxes, you're done paying on McCook Elementary. If you have one more payment to do, that will hit by December, and then we're done collecting on that. So in the 2025 calendar year, you will not pay taxes on a school bond, okay? If this passes in November, it would begin being taxed in January of '26. So there'll be a year without taxes. So if everything holds the way it looks and what we're talking about, and we can't predict the future, but you know, we're at 89 cents, 90 cents we pass. If this passes, we would go to $1.16 in 2026, in that neighborhood range, whereas we were at $1.12 just a few short years ago. So we've tried to be efficient with your money. We've tried to pare this project down. I feel it's imperative for me to talk about the pare down, getting from a $60 million building, because we talk about it being 56, but Mr. Norgard and I had caught about 10 things off of that before we even started value engineering that the original designs on the project. We wanted a balcony and extra seats in the auditorium, and Mr. Wolford came back and said, that's $2.5 million. Zing, it had to go. We wanted to do some remodeling in the science rooms at the high school. $2 million, zing, they had to go. The library at the high school, zing. So we were cutting big time. We're not presenting, because I've had this question asked to me, or people say, man, you guys are building a Taj Mahal over here, you're building a Cadillac. Man, I'm seeing Mr. Wagner over here, I'm a Chevy guy, you know. Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. We tried to bring this back to an affordable thing. We're not, it's a great building, it's a great build, and it can last for 100 years. And I think that's the biggest thing that we had to leave off of this. I get asked all the time that question of why not this or why not that, because we had to meet our goals and we had to make it last 100 years. And so everything we've done from a financial standpoint has been to try to hold it back the reins and get it into that level. So we're pretty confident we've done that with our goals. So we're going to go to Q&A now, I think, right? Is that correct? So we've also got some board members around here that'll chime in. And so really right now is an opportunity for anybody to ask questions, or anybody just to make some comments to the group about the project, or about any questions you have. So let's just open it up and get rolling here. And if there are none, we're not going to take forever. So
What's the square footage of the school now compared to what it's going to be when we're done?
I've been asked that, and Matthew, you know that.
So it's hard to compare because we're adjusting some of that auditorium space. But the current junior high is around 69,000 square feet. And then you add that performing arts onto it. But the new building, we're building brand new 100,000 square feet and remodeling 30,000 between the gym and the band and choir, auditorium spaces. So we have to increase space because we don't have enough space now. So that's kind of where we're at.
And a large chunk of that new space is the auditorium, which is brand new. I do know that our typical classrooms were in the 680 to 700 square foot range, and we tried to get them from 750 to 900, depending on science or what. We tried to increase those square footages in those classrooms. Is that correct, guys?
Some of the classrooms were smaller. It was, some of them were closer to 550. And then you do have some classes that are a good average of 750 or so. We've tried to bump every classroom up that we can. So some of them have gone from 550 to 800, and some have only gone from 750 to 800. It's kind of that balance of trying to economize our space, but yet give the kids enough classroom space. And then we've also added several classrooms, including the study halls, some of those flex spaces, and the resource rooms. Some of those resource rooms are pretty small. Some of them feel like you're almost in a closet. Let me look real quick. The existing school is 69,000 square feet. The new school, if you just want to kind of compare those numbers, would be around 98,000 square feet, and then you have that 30,000 of performing arts. So we're increasing, by about 30,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you. Art?
Mr. Norgard, you mentioned the bond issue. Okay, when we vote, if we vote yes on the bond issue, we're voting for a guaranteed 43.5 million, not over. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're voting for $43,500,000. That's the cost of the bond. Well,
So I'm just curious how, so any construction project involved in that experience, small or large, if it's the first one that was held to the original bid, it probably the first in history. So how do you guarantee it won't go over that?
So and Sampson can come
Let's
up
have
here and
Sampson
talk on
talk to
that.
So part of the way that we do that, and for Sampson Construction, about 80% of the work that we perform is on a construction manager basis. So our estimating team, our scheduling team is accustomed to, I don't want to say trying to predict the future, but we do build in certain contingencies and allowances knowing that, just like you said, things are going to change. Through our experience, we've been able to estimate what that cost of change is going to be. And so we've met with the school district, we've met with the design team, their experience and ours, and we've identified what that value is of contingency that I mentioned earlier. So that contingency helps cover those instances where things change or different materials get selected. And so that's the process that we use to cover that potential increase. But it is included in the current 43.5, which is still the guaranteed maximum that it can be.
They did a lot. Through the process of reducing the price of this project, they did a lot. I think that if Adam was here last time, he talked a lot about the estimations. He had to contact a lot of folks. And I even know W Design helped with contacting vendors and getting estimates. When we met, and I was pretty, I was pretty firm in wanting to know what that final absolute number is. And at that meeting, I felt really comfortable between W Design and Sampson that they were giving us a real number that they thought they could build this project for that price. I can't, like Stuart said, we can't predict the future, but I feel very good about this project. I feel good about the fact that we went through this process of reducing costs, double-checking estimates, and helping with the estimation process to get to that number. I feel good about it. Again, there's a contingency in place. I hope that at the end of all of this, we have enough money to put new furniture into our classrooms, because it would be nice to put new furniture into brand new classrooms. Maybe we won't. But those are the types of things that we would cut first. And then, of course, we would eventually put new furniture in those classrooms, but we'd have to do that like we did at the high school every year, buy classroom furniture, a couple classrooms a year. So in 5-7 years, all those classrooms would have new furniture in it.
And as far as furniture and furnishings, we've been saving as much money as we can, doing what we can, setting a few dollars aside as we go. For example, we can only use lunch funds, food money that we've generated off of food services on food equipment. Tom's over here laughing. I guarantee he's saying we can't buy scoreboards with them. So if you read the paper lately, but we've got money in our lunch fund to help the construction project by buying our new cafeteria equipment that would be needed, take over what we can. Same thing with general depreciation for some desks and teachers' desks. We're going to have some funds set aside.
We're actually over the limit of what we're supposed to save, but Mr. Gross has been working with the Department of Education, getting permission to store up money, knowing that this project's coming forward. So we have several $100,000 set aside for the purchase of kitchen equipment, and we actually have some new equipment in there that's moving over if this passes to the new building. So that's another way that we're hoping to keep those dollars in line with what we're asking in this bond issue.
This has been eye-opening for me, and when we were trying to pare down some costs, one thing I always talk about was we were with W Design and Sampson, and the elevator that's much needed, okay, in this new design, we saved $180,000 by going from a block elevator shaft to a steel elevator shaft that has the same life expectancy, but just by changing that product. So as we go through, if it looks like we're getting expensive in certain areas, we're going to value engineer and do everything we can to get the right products in to bring the price down to stay within.
I'm sorry, I
No, you're good.
No, you mentioned security entrances, and of all the benefits listed, it's as important as any of those benefits, I believe, but, so what is a security entrance? What does it consist of, and how's it different from what we have today?
What we want to do, one of the main features of the security change that we want with this new structure is a single entry point for all of our junior high students coming in that main entry. And I don't have a picture of it. We looked at it several times. It's that big two-story entry, it's glass, one spot. They come in, they come into that location, there's the commons on the other side. Now how they operate at the junior high, maybe the junior high kids will stay down there, or maybe they'll go upstairs to that second commons area. And we can watch all those kids come in at one point. That's really important. And then once the school day starts, we lock all those doors. And any student that enters the building after that has to go into the airlock, then go into the office space, get checked in, and then can enter the junior high. So that is a key element with providing safety for students. The other piece is stop getting away from our students traveling between the buildings every period. There's been a number of times out there when we've had administrators and staff members standing outside making sure that, you know, if someone breaks free from the work ethic camp, we've got folks out there keeping an eye on things. It's just not safe to have our kids walking outside every hour on the hour when we change periods. And then the last piece is Mr. Wolford talked about those emergency doors. So making sure that these buildings can be, you can push a button, boom, all those doors lock. So the high school's locked off completely from the junior high, and vice versa. It goes both ways. And so you really improve safety by putting in a lot of these features. And we might even do some more expansion of those emergency doors. We'll see where the budget comes in. But safety was absolutely a key element of this project. Limiting entry points we want exit points in case there's a fire, but entry points, we want that one entry point.
Mr. Lyons, how many doors are in this facility? 12. And to answer,
12 entries, there's more than 12 doors.
yeah, 12 entry doors, and the high school has 26. So, Mr. Dickus, him and I trying to manage that with 26 doors over there for security and this will help with that because it's going to bring everything on one side into that one entrance. We still have the south side, obviously.
What's that?
You mentioned glass.
Yeah.
Now, when you think of security, glass doesn't come to mind, but
Yeah.
it must be bulletproof.
It was the reduction of glass, actually. So when we had the first project, there was a big walls filled with glass. And actually, some of that glass probably still going to be removed to improve safety even more. Now, there are things we can do to glass, not to make it bulletproof, but to make entry more difficult. And hopefully, we're able to accomplish some of that with some films and things like that to protect entry points for kids. The other thing is, too, in that commons area, you'll have the office space there, but right inside the commons area, the architects designed the school resource officer's office. And his office will have a corner window. He'll be able to look out onto that commons, and he's centrally located between the two buildings. So he's right there in that commons area. Currently, his office is in the junior high facility. So if there's an issue at the high school, he actually has to, it's just more cumbersome to travel between the two buildings. So that, I also believe, is a security improvement.
If the junior high is not going to last 100 years, what about the gym and the existing facilities that you are going to keep?
That's a great question. Mr. Wolford?
The gym is in pretty good shape of all the buildings. It has the least issues. Is it going to last a full 100 years on the remodel? The school may be looking at the gym alone. I think where we redo the locker rooms, though, the reconstruction of that, yeah, we'll get 100 years out of the locker rooms. But the gym itself structurally, it's got a lot of years left in it. Is it going to be a full 100? That one, the school may have to look at that again.
The
Good to know.
portion of the high school, the auditorium is gonna be converted. So the existing auditorium is a 1955 build. But the rest around the high school, that was all added on, I believe, in 85. So in 85, what you know is the existing science rooms, art rooms, and band and choir, that's way newer. That's 30 years newer. That's 85. The other portion of that we would be rebuilding, and it was built much sturdier, so we should be able to get 100 years out of that.
And back to the gymnasium, one thing we do need to keep in mind, with the plan, the board has a 100-year facilities plan that takes us way out 100 years from now, that includes elementary buildings and future locations for those buildings. So they have a concept for that. So within that plan is the idea of going forward with a high school bond 30 years from now. Well, we're going to be building gymnasium. I can't speak on behalf of the community, but I know part of that project is going to be gymnasium space. So there's some things you can probably do at that time if there's an issue with the gymnasium.
Question probably for the engineers. Back in the 50s and 60s when they were building schools, what was the life expectancy of those buildings? Was it, we're trying to get 80 to 100 out of one today. What were they trying to get back in the 50s and 60s?
I think they would have told you at that time that they could get 70 to 100 years out of it. But I will tell you, walking around this building compared to the high school, it's apples and oranges. The high school is all masonry. It's all solid. You're looking at masonry, but you go upstairs and we have the flexible walls in the middle. It was designed, I think it appears it's a lighter floor load than the high school was. Can I say why they did it? It just appears this building, for whatever reason, was built more cheaply in 1965 than the high school was in 1953. Is there a good reason? No. The other thing is this building, and wasn't mentioned, this building was designed with a FAD educational concept. I think Mary Doolin can talk about it. She's taught here. But that's why it was designed to have all the rooms opened up in a team teaching approach. It was one of those things that education went through it.
It was truly a fad. It's called an open concept. And for about 10 to 15 years, schools across the country designed these classroom spaces where multiple teachers could teach larger groups of students at the exact same time. The problem with that educational philosophy is that it didn't work. Nobody wanted to do it. It was a complete failure. So you see schools around the nation, so it's not just McCook, it's around the nation, that have converted their schools back to the traditional classroom setup with 4 walls and a door, right? And so we've completely gone away from it. So one of the things I noticed it when I was a young up-and-coming educator, student teaching in a classroom that was an open concept classroom where they built walls out of shelves and things like that. Now they've got permanent walls in that building. But no one did this, and I learned that you don't build a building based off of an educational philosophy. You just build buildings the way we always have, traditionally.
The other thing I would comment on that is this is just Jeff Gross suspecting. In 1952, McCook built North Ward. In 1955, McCook built McCook High School, and in 1963, they built McCook Junior High. That was the third building in a 11-year period. My guess is they had to spend less on this building because they had a lot of existing debt going on at that point. That's a lot of build in an 11-year period. So,
Mary.
Yeah.
I got it.
This is your passionate educator here. Mary Dooland. As you were saying, this was built, in fact, I was one of the first classes in this building when I was a junior high student. And it was built for the open classroom with the accordion doors. The classrooms were built smaller because it was intended to have the accordion walls open so you could work together as teams and with kids. They felt that kids' creativity was being squashed. So they wanted to open it up, and that was the actual concept of that. I guess I feel that there is no investment that yields as great a return as the investment in education. I feel that this facility will provide quality instructional space that there isn't now. Not that the teachers are not doing a fantastic job in those spaces. It will also provide quality programming that is existing in smaller spaces, not adequate spaces, and some programming that we can't even offer right now. I think that we need to provide the things that the kids need to give them the competitive edge upon graduation, whether they stay in McCook, whether they go somewhere else. I feel like an educated workforce is a community's foundation and the future of the economy. And I feel very strongly that the plans that you've seen tonight are headed that direction.
Jeff, I'm sorry. I apologize.
You're good.
I don't know how to run technology. I'm probably about the average age of the administration here. Yeah, most of you know me. My name's Tom Brednick. I've been on school board here for, some of you probably are thinking too long. Some of you are probably wishing I'd stay longer. My wife's not, so that's part of that solution. In 1985, we built Central. I just wanted to point something out in that cost, and I know Tobin won't go this route. I apologize for calling him out on this, but in the 80s, we actually borrowed money as a school district between 8.5% and 9.5% to fund Central on 2 different bond issues over a period of time. They were paid off very quickly, but rates, obviously, we know what happened in the 80s. But Jeff pointed out timing. I want you to think historically. When we look at McCook and our investment in education, in 1960s, we had men returning from one war only to come home and find their sons or younger sons heading off to another. We actually had a little bit of an economic recession. We can push to 85, and there were more sales. I pumped gas in town, so if you didn't know, I used to work at a gas station down the street named Bunstocks. It was a great place to grow up. But there were more sale bills in the windows for farming operations in the 80s when we voted to approve and put in a bond issue for Central Elementary, which will be one of our 100-year buildings. In my opinion, it's greatly, we've reinvested in HVAC this past year. We've continued to maintain the facility and take care of it as best we can.
Roofing.
And the roof, the high school. When you look back 20 years ago when we did McCook Elementary, the community spoke as to what they wanted, and they wanted us to get Central site. We had 4 educational unit buildings we've downsized and moved away from. People are forgetting that we were spending money on roofs at East Ward, West Ward, and North Ward, and now we have one common site. This board has done everything possible over the last 30 years to continue to operate on a low cost. This is an expensive project. There's never a good time to spend money. There's always a great time to invest in education. I think that's a point Mary Doolin's brought forward. The second thing I tell you is, we mentioned 2013 in the PowerPoint projector, but I attended a meeting in this room 20 years ago, or just over in the other room, as a guest. I hadn't yet been elected to my seat. And I listened to stories at that meeting, and then very shortly after, about how we couldn't build walls on the second floor. And the board members that were there knew that then and looked for solutions. This isn't a problem that we've raced to in the last 30 days or in the last 6 months or because the time is ripe. This is because our children deserve an academic learning environment that is capable for their abilities. Career and technical education. My shop class instructor kicked me out. He knew I should have a desk job, and he called it when I was 15 years old, okay? My point is, we have limited space in CTE. Our community needs ag and career technical degrees. We need to be able to offer that. Yes, this is more space, and I apologize, it's like my addition at home. You put more space on, you fill it up, it ends up costing more. I get that. But these are kids' lives and careers. I have friends that can roof a house and call me to estimate the dollar amounts, but I'm not getting up on that roof. This is an investment in our future, and I apologize for saying it, but I'm voting yes. And by the way, if you don't want to vote for me, that's fine, because I'm not on the ballot.
Brian?
Can you give us a comparison of, like, we got the bond for the elementary school when we started, to what we're doing with this bond now? This is
Pennies.
0.26 per 100. What was the McCook Elementary?
It was 12.5 cents per 100.
12.5?
12.5 cents per 100. So,
I think the interest rate at that time would have been right around 4.5%. I went back and looked at that today. It was $5.8 million bond, I believe. About 4.5%. The last time the board refinanced it, they refinanced the last 5 years down to 0.5%. And so that percent has come down over time, as bonds kind of naturally do, because a portion of them gets paid off. But yeah, I didn't know the levy piece, but the rate was a little bit higher than we're looking at now.
and depending on what interest rates do, I don't envision that I'm going to be here 5-10 years down the line watching interest rates, but there's people on the board and people in these roles that will. McCook will need to refi that bond over 30 years, maybe 5 times, if interest rates do what they do. And every time, how much did we save on that last one? Do you know, Toba?
It wasn't the largest one we saved on. I know
No,
that
but it
was
was
one
a
of the-
chunk.
Yeah.
Well, the last one, there was only 5 years left and not a lot of principal, so it's like the board, I think, squeezed about one last 40 or 50,000 out of, by refinancing it one last time. But the bigger savings came
Earlier
on.
on. Since I've been here, we did it 3 times, so all 3 times since I've been here.
Mary?
Just one more point. My science teacher was Val Pullen. Then when I was on the staff at MPS, she was a colleague of mine. And I tell you, I don't know how many times she mentioned what was cut in this building that they didn't get. You know, this was cut. That's why this is like this. This was cut. And I'll always remember her talking about that.
I've heard that from other people, Mary, that were here at that time, that this building had some cuts made to its design to get the cost down. And I think that ended up costing us more in the long run. Any more questions?
I'm going to put one more plug in, and this is a plug on the process, because Mr. Norgard and I have never been through this. One thing that the Board of Education, when we interviewed architecture firms, we made the decision to go local with W Design and with Mr. Wolford. And so I've had the utmost confidence through this build and this project to where we are right now, that one of our local businesses, not only was he was doing this as a business, but he's a patron and a taxpayer, and they wanted to make sure this project was right. We weren't dealing with the company from Omaha, we weren't dealing with the company from Lincoln, we were dealing with somebody locally that designed this to fit our kids' needs. And it's been a joy working with W Design through this process, and if this thing passes, I suspect we're going to spend a lot more time together over the next few years. But we're trying to do all of this locally. And I can't speak for half of everybody that voted when we did Sampson Construction as our manager at risk, but Sampson had built the hospital, Sampson had built Farm Credit Services, and Sampson has done the college building over there. They're on the YMCA project, so they know how to utilize local subs, all the local people they can, because they have history in McCook. So those were big factors in us getting to this stage, was doing everything we can to take care of McCook.
Clearly, when we care about the project, when you care about a project you're working on, it turns out better at the end. And I believe that that's what we have as a team of people who really, experts and professionals who really care about this project and care about our community. They're vested in our community. I think that's important. We're going to probably start tours. One thing I want to point out, we do have a timeline. There's a lot of questions that get asked over the years. Some folks think this came out of nowhere, and you've heard me mention 2013 a number of times. But that's when this started with the Board of Education. We started really taking a close look at in 2013. I've got a headline up there from McCook Gazette in 2021. mentioning, hey, there's a bond project coming up that's going to include the junior high. At that time, we didn't know specifically what it was. So we've tried to be as transparent as possible with this process all the way along and communicate with the community. And we want people to know that we know there's a lot going on in McCook, but we've been working on this project for a long time, and we targeted this date a decade ago, that we were going to approach the community with this option. So I just want to make sure that's clear. If you want to look at that timeline, it's actually on the website. It's a little small to read up here, but if you want to stay up here, you can. And I guess that's all I have. Again, I want to thank you everyone for coming this evening, and we are going to do a tour of the junior high, the Mr. Chad Lyons tour of the junior high with Mr. Dickus showing us some spaces at the high school. It's an excellent tour, and if you want to see what's going on, what our challenges are, go on that tour with them. Again, thank you. And with that, you're dismissed.